Everyone has Excel downloaded, yes? Cool. All right.
All right. Thank you, Erica. So my name is Chris Murphy, and I'll be your instructor this afternoon for Big Fun with Microsoft Excel. Today we're going to take it beyond the intro stuff and hopefully show you guys some new cool things that you can use to make your work easier. My email is up here, so if you have any questions after class or want to follow up at all, I would invite you to send me an email. I want to make sure that you guys succeed with Excel. I've got the, we're not going to download any files right now, but the web address is here and it's also up on the board here. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump into, actually into Excel. Okay, so is everybody good with the address here? If you have any issues getting to the site, connectivity or whatever, I also have the files that we're going to be using on a thumb drive. So, but we're not going to actually use any of the downloaded files immediately. I want to just do a warm-up exercise with you, and we're going to build something from scratch, and then we'll go to some of the other files. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just power up Excel on this machine. So I'm using Excel 2016 on a PC. Most of the stuff we're doing today should be pretty similar on both platforms, both the Mac and the PC, and I'll try to talk you through when we have any differences. So when I fire up Excel, I have an option of either opening an existing file or starting with a brand new blank workbook. I think what we want to do right now is open up just start with a brand new blank workbook. Okay, so what I like to do is just a warm-up exercise here, go through some basics of calculations and review some of the nuances of doing calculations in Excel, and show you some other cool things we can do. Pardon me. So we could do a boring business budget, but I think you can learn as much. You can probably learn more when you're having fun than when you're doing something really boring. So rather than doing some budget for business, I say we plan a budget for a party. We can still learn the same stuff, and this is something you can probably, I can almost see the weekend from here, so you guys have to, you guys probably have some stuff planned for the weekend. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to type in a title here. I just type in barbecue bash or BBQ bash. Okay, and then I'm just going to skip a line here. I'll just press the enter key and go down to the third line here, and I'm going to type in some column headings here. So I'm going to type in a column heading here for item, and then I can tab or use the mouse or the arrow key to go over to the right, and to the right of item I'll type in the word quantity. And then to the right of quantity I'm going to create a column heading here for price, and then I'll also keep going. I want to have a column that will show me the total, and then I also want to calculate the percentage of each of these items. Okay. All right, so we've got our column headings. Now, your assignment, should you choose to accept it, is to make a list of 6 items that you want to have at your party. And I know some of you can probably think of more than 6 items, but just so we are all using the same layout on the spreadsheet, once you limit it to 6 items. So I'm asking you to make up 6 items you want to have at your party, the quantity, and the price. You're filling in the first 3 columns. And if you're not feeling creative, I'll go ahead and you can just copy the data that I'm making up here. So I'll type in steak. Apologies to all you vegetarians. You can have tofu burgers if you want to. And then it's a party, so we got to have some beer. And let's see, we'll also do some chips, and I'll get some salsa, and get some soda. And they told me you're supposed to eat something green every month, so let's put some put veggie trays here. Okay, isn't that like the rule? You're supposed to have something green like at least once a month. All right, so you can type in whatever stuff you want. Just have some fun with it, okay? And then I'm going to make up some quantities for each item here. So I'll just type in like I'm going to get 12 steaks, and they're $9.99 each. And I'll get some beer, get 12 packs of beer, get some good beer, $14.99. And then I'll get like 3 bags of chips at $6.99. I'll get a couple of jars of salsa at $7.99. You get maybe a bunch of 6 packs of soda. I'll say they're $5.99. And then I'll get a couple of veggie trays, and let's say those are $13.99. Okay, so just making up some items and quantities and prices. Okay, everybody got that? Okay, that's pretty easy to come up with stuff for a party, right? So, all right, so Now we want to just do some basic calculations. This is probably going to be a review for you guys, but we're gonna throw some curves at you and get a little bit more sophisticated in a minute. So if you're wondering if this is too basic for you, we'll take it up a notch in just a moment. But I'm going to go ahead and I want to calculate what my total spend is on each item here. So I'm going to go up to my total column, and to calculate what I'm spending on each item, I'm basically going to take the quantity times the price. Just a simple multiplication formula. So we start all of our formulas with equal, yeah. So type in equal, and then I'm just going to use the pointing method to build my formula. After I've typed in equal, I'm going to click on the quantity of my first item. That's in B4, and then I'm going to type the asterisk on the keyboard to multiply, and then I'll click on the price of the first item. So I've got this formula B4 times C4, okay? I'll press enter to complete that, and it shows me I'm spending almost 120 bucks on steaks here, okay? So I want to do those calculations for all the other items. What's the fastest way to do that? Drag it. What if, so I've only got 5 items here. What if I have 500 or 5,000 items? I got to drive down 5,000 rows. Quick trick, if I've got data in an adjacent column, I can get on that fill handle, and you guys are right, you could drag down, but a faster thing is just to double click on the autofill handle. If you double click on the autofill handle, it'll copy the formula down. Okay, so that's assuming that there's some data in an adjacent column. It will just basically copy that down. So that's cool, because if I've got, some of you guys are going to have these data sets where you might have thousands or tens of thousands of rows. That's a quick way to copy that formula down. All right, everybody good with that? Okay, now I want to figure out what my total spend is on the party. So I'm going to bug my cursor at the bottom of the total column, and we're just going to use the good old auto sum function to calculate our total spend here. So with my cursor at the bottom of the total column, I'll go on the home tab near the upper right corner and just click on the auto sum command. And so when I do that, Excel assumes that I want to get the sum of the items that are immediately above. That's exactly what I want, so I'll just press the enter key. Okay, so I'm spending about 233 bucks on my party. So anybody spending more than that? No? You guys are, come on. I'm going to find out who's got the biggest party for this weekend. All right, so that's stuff hopefully you guys already know. Okay, now let's go ahead and calculate the percentage of each item. I want to figure out where I'm spending my money. So to do that, basically I want to take the total for each item divided by my grand total. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and bug my cursor where I want to see the percentage of the first item. We're going to do a simple division formula. I'll type in equal. Then I'm going to click on the total for the first item. And then I'm going to type in a slash for division. And I'm going to click on the grand total at the bottom of that column D there. Okay, so I've got D4 divided by D10. Okay, so anybody see an issue here if I just build this formula and copy it down without work, or is there an issue here that you can anticipate? Well, let's try it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and press the enter key. Okay, and that shows me I'm spending about 51%, 52% of my budget on my first item here. Okay, so before I copy that down, I think what I'll do is format the cell. So when I copy the cell down, I'll have the formula and the formatting already done. So with my cursor in the cell where I've got my first percentage calculation, I'm on the home tab here, and I'm going to go up to the number group, and I'm going to click on the icon with the percent. Okay, that'll convert that. Instead of a decimal value, it shows it as percentage. So that just shows that as 52%. Okay, so I should just be able to do the little double click trick we just talked about, and I'm done with a spreadsheet, right? Right? So what happens if you copy this down? Oh, I get errors. Okay, so let's go over why this is happening, you guys. So those of you who took the level 1 class, we talked about this concept of relative addressing in Excel. So when you build formulas in Excel, unless you specify otherwise, Excel is thinking in what we call relative terms. So if I go back to my first formula here, I've created this formula that says D4 divided by D10, but the way Excel is thinking about that, it's thinking in relative terms. It's thinking relative to where I'm building the formula, where are the numbers that I'm pointing to. So Excel is thinking about the relationships between these cells. It's thinking about, oh, you want to take the number that's one column over in the same row divided by the number that's one column over, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows down. So it thinks in those relative terms. So the problem is if you examine the second formula where we have this error message, it's telling me D5, that's cool, divided by D11. What's in D11? Nothing, okay? So and you get this little smart tag here. If you point at that, it says that you got a problem here. So you're trying to divide by 0, and that's against the law in math, right? So this is a key point when you're copying formulas in Excel. So I want to go back and fix this first formula. So when I copy it down, I want the reference to the specific item to change from D4 to D5, D6, and so on. But I want the reference to the total in cell D10 to stay absolutely the same. I don't want that to change when I copy the formula. So who can tell me how I convert that? Okay, so this is a really key concept when you're copying formulas. To convert a cell reference in a formula from a relative reference, which will change when you copy the formula, to what they call an absolute reference, which will stay the same when you copy the formula, I'm going to go back up to my first formula here. I'm going to edit it on the formula bar. I'm going to bug anywhere on the reference to D10. I can click my cursor at the beginning, the middle, or the end. It doesn't matter as long as I have my cursor right near that cell reference. And the way to do it, if you're running a PC, you can press the F4 key. If you're running a Mac, you can hit Command T. So I think actually, is anybody running it? Oh, you guys are running. Let's say we got 1 HP back there. Okay, so yeah, for all you guys, so you press Command T or F4. What happens? What do you get? What change do you get there?
D5 divided by D11.
You should get the dollar symbols there, right? Okay, so those dollar symbols mean when I copy the formula, don't change that cell reference. You just change that from a relative reference, which will change when you copy the formula, to what they call an absolute reference, which will stay the same. So, like I say, you can use the keyboard shortcut on a PC, it's F4, on a Mac, it's Command T. And if you don't remember the keyboard shortcuts, you can always just manually type the dollar signs in there yourself. Okay? So now I'm going to go ahead and just press Enter to complete the editing changes I've made. And that doesn't affect this cell, but check it out. If I copy this formula down, if I just point at the fill handle and double click, cool, now all my formulas work, okay? So that's one of those important concepts. The only time that you care about this relative versus absolute references when you're copying formulas. And we do a lot, most people do a lot of copying of formulas in Excel. You create one formula and you copy it down and you copy it across. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I just missed one thing. To convert the to the percentage sign?
Yeah.
Could you just go over that text one?
Yeah, so I just clicked on the cell, and then on the home tab in the number group, there's a lot of different formatting options, and one of them is just click on the percent icon there. Okay. And that will convert that just instead of a decimal, it'll show it as a percent icon, okay? Yeah, go ahead. Say that again?
How do you fix the errors on the Windows?
Yeah, well, on a Mac it's Control T or Command T. For a Windows machine, it's F4.
F4?
F4, yeah. Let me see what we got. So yeah, go ahead and click on the reference there. Now go ahead and press F4. There, good. Now press Enter, and now copy your formula down again. Remember, you can double click instead of dragging all the way down. I'm trying to save you some time. I mean, I'm trying to got to do the double click trick because that will set you'll get your work done and you'll be able to start the party sooner, right? All right, so hopefully that helps you guys understand a little bit about formulas and copying formulas in Excel. This concept of go ahead, Erica.
So let's say you add more items.
Yeah.
And that changes the position of things, or how do you account?
Well, in this case, if I insert a new row here, if I click, let's say I'm going to have another item here. If I right click, I'm going to point at row 10 here and do a right click, and I'll choose Insert. So now I move this row down, okay? But check out, if I go to my percentages, it actually adjusted the formula. So usually when you insert rows, Excel is pretty smart about adjusting all the formulas that you've already built, okay? All right, so now you guys you got some ideas for what you should go out and spend your money on tonight or tomorrow night. So Let me show you another cool trick for, I want to show you an alternative way to do just what we did, taking advantage of the table features that are built into Excel. So a lot of people manage lists of information in Excel, and if you're not using the table features to manage your lists, you're probably working too hard. So let's go ahead and take a look at another approach to doing this whole thing. So what I'm gonna do is keep the item, quantity, and price columns. We're going to redo the total and the percentage column. So let's go ahead and just point at the column heading for column D, and then drag over to column E, and then right click on any of those column headings you just selected, and we can choose the delete command to get rid of them. You can also delete, if you want to use the ribbon, you can go to the home tab and there's some delete options over on the right side, but usually right clicking is a quicker way to do it. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, clear content would leave the cells there, but any formatting, like I did the percent style there, that would keep that. So if I added more numbers later on, those would still be. So I just wanted to kind of start fresh. So I said just delete the column completely. Okay. So now check it out. I'm going to bug my cursor into the middle of my data here. I don't have. I just have one cell selected, and I want to tell Excel to turn this list into a table. So before I tell Excel to turn it into a table, usually what I want to do is have a one row descriptive column heading for my data. You don't want to have any blank rows or blank columns, and you don't want to have any subtotals or grand totals. We're going to be able to do those calculations once we've got the table going here. And then notice also the way I set up my data here, I've got blank rows and columns all the way around the data, so that'll make it easier for me to convert this to a table. Okay, so with my cursor on any cell in the data, I'm going to go to the Insert tab, and on the Insert tab, I'm going to click on Table. Okay, and that's so slightly different on the Mac, but you should get into this screen that says Create Table. Okay, and Excel takes a guess based on my cursor position on where the data is. Because I had the blank rows and columns, it guesses correctly what I want. And it also notices the stuff in the top row looks a little bit different, so it guesses that that's a header row. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and just hit the OK button, and bam, you just turned it into a table. Okay? So once you convert it into a table, first of all, it does some nice formatting for you. That's pretty cool. And then notice there's also a new tab at the top there, what they call a contextual tab. The Table Tools Design tab was not there until you created the table. And like I say, that's what they call a contextual tab. As long as I'm in the table, that'll show up. But check it out. If I click out of the table, where'd my table tools go? They only show up when I'm in the table. So I'm going to click back in the table to get to those table tools. Okay, so it does some nice formatting. It's got a style here. There's also on the Design tab under Table Tools a bunch of other table styles. So you can change the style to one of these others. And maybe I'm in an orange mood, or I can click the drop down here, and I've got lots of different styles I can go with here. Okay, so it's kind of like we're getting into spring here, so maybe I'm in like a green mood, you know. Okay, so it's really easy to do some fast formatting using these table styles. So pick any table style that you like. Okay. All right, now that we've got, anybody have any questions about just getting a table set up? Now that we've got a table going, let's check out doing our calculations again and see the difference when we're doing our calculations in a table. I'm going to go over to the column to the right of the price, and I'm going to type in total. So I type in total and press enter, and oh cool, look what happens. It automatically extends the table. So if you add new columns of data or add new rows, it automatically extends the table for you. So that's kind of nice. I don't need to go back and manually do any formatting. Excel automatically applies that formatting. Okay, now let's go ahead, and I think what I want to do, let me get back to the default style here. Let's go ahead and do some calculations. So just like we did before, we want to multiply the quantity times the price. So like always, we start our formulas with the equal symbol. Then I'm going to click on the quantity of the first item. And oh, look at that. Instead of a cell address, Excel uses what we call a structured reference. So it picks up the name of the column heading and uses that in the formula. It makes it way easier to understand. So I've got my quantity. Now I'm going to type the asterisk to multiply. And then I'm going to click my cursor on the price for the first item. And again, I get another structured reference. So it uses these structured references when we're building formulas in our tables. Okay? So I'm done with that simple multiplication formula. I'm going to hit the enter key, and that's cool. Look at that. It automatically copies the data down for me. It assumes I'm in a table that you probably want the same formula on all the rows here. So you get a little smart tag there. Excel takes a guess, but it gives you some options. You can say, no, that's not what I wanted to do. I can click on this smart tag here, and I can have it undo that or tell it to stop doing those columns for you. But you can see why I say if you're not using tables, you're just working too hard, right? I mean, this is, and it looks really nice. And we haven't discussed it, but you know, when you create a spreadsheet and you use the table features, and somebody says, "Wow, that's a really nice, nice spreadsheet you created. It must have taken a long time to format it." You can't just tell them, "Oh yeah, that's a table. I did it in about 2 minutes." Just don't give away all your magic tricks. Just say thank you and don't tell them how easy it was. Okay. All right. So now we want to calculate the total. And that's another thing we can do in our table really easily too. Check this out. With my cursor in the table, I'm going to go up to the Table Tools Design tab, and looky here, there's this button that says Total Row. So if I just click on that, it just automatically calculates the total for me. I just click on a checkbox and it's done. So that's pretty cool too, right? All right, now let's go ahead and do our percentage calculations. Actually, before we do that, when I turn on the total row using that feature, it automatically assumes that you want to do a calculation on whatever the last column is. And if the last column of data is numeric, like we have here, it assumes that we want to get a sum. If the last column of data is non-numeric, it'll assume that you want to get a count of how many items you have. So those are the default calculations. If I wanted to do something else, I can click on the total for this item, click on the drop down that appears to the right, and check that out. I can change the different calculations. So I could change this, instead of knowing the total, I might want to know the average or get a count of how many items, or want to know the max, what's the item I'm spending the most on, or the min is the smallest amount. Okay, and that works not just for that column, but for any of the columns of your data. So if I want to know, I can calculate the quantity column. I can click there and hit the drop down, and I've got some other calculations I can choose for that. So you can summarize any column of data, okay, really easily. Okay. Anybody have any questions on what we're doing with tables or calculations so far, and how you can use this?
Can you repeat how you added the total?
Okay, all I did is I have my cursor in the table. On the Table Tools Design tab, there's a checkbox marked total row. Just toggle that checkbox on.
Okay.
And threw you off because it's too simple, right? All right. So, all right. So let's go ahead and do our percentage calculation again and see what difference that makes when I'm using the table feature. So I'm going to bug my cursor to the right of the total, type in my percentage column heading, press enter to complete that, and Excel automatically extends the table for me. Okay. Now we're going to do the same division calculation we did earlier. I want to divide the total for the first item by my grand total at the bottom of the column. So once again, I start with the equal symbol. I'm going to click on the total for my first item. It uses that structured reference, as they call it. I'm going to type a slash key for division, and then I'm going to click on my grand total, and it makes reference to the intersection of these two columns and rows. So I'm going to go ahead and press the enter key, and cool, it copies it all the way down. And this time, because I use the total row feature, Excel is smart enough to know that it shouldn't keep changing the denominator in that formula. So if you examine the contents, it's always referring to my grand total for each of the formulas I've created there. Okay, so the only thing I might want to do here is highlight the values in my percentage column, and then on the home tab, go ahead and use the percent style button to do some nice formatting. Okay, so tables are cool for doing some nice formatting. You can see some of the advantages of doing calculations in tables. Some other cool things I can do with tables. I can do sorting and filtering really easily. Now you can do sorting and filtering without using tables, but that's kind of built into the tables. So check out the column headings. I've got these column headings. I've got these drop down arrows to the right. If I wanted to sort my stuff by how much I'm spending on each item, I'll just go to, for example, the total column, click on the drop down that appears at the top of the total column, and I've got some options for sorting. So I'll choose sort largest to smallest, okay? And I can see in descending order of what I'm spending on each item. So here I'm sorting it by the dollar amount. If I want to sort it alphabetically by item, it's easy peasy. So I can click on that and sort by whatever column I want to. I can also do filtering. So a lot of times when we've got a large data set, you don't want to look at everything. You want to zoom on specific items here. So I want to see, in this example, I want to see just the stuff that I'm spending over 25 bucks on, or whatever number you've got for your data. So I'm sorting on the total column. You can see the little drop down. I can also click on the drop down and do some filtering. So if I go to the total column and click on the drop down, I've got some checkboxes here that I can toggle on or off to control which items I want to display. But then I also have this number filters option. Lots of different options for filtering, equals, greater than, less than, and so on. I could say show me my top 10 or top 5 or whatever. I just want to see everything that's over a certain dollar amount, so I'll choose greater than, and then in the dialog box I'll type in whatever value I want to filter on. I'm going to filter mine by 25. Click on OK, and it limits the list to just the items that meet the criteria I've specified. The other cool thing about this, you guys, is because I used the total line, it recalculated the total. So it's showing me the total just for the items I'm filtering on here. Okay, whereas if we had used just a regular sum function like we did earlier, it would still show me the grand total that would include all the items, not just the ones that I'm filtering for. Okay, so tables, I think, are a really powerful feature and that a lot of people don't know about in Excel, and I would encourage you guys to take advantage of that when you're managing lists of information. So anybody have any questions on how you, yeah, go ahead.
Sir, how did you get the, like, when I drop down, I can only filter by, like...
Let me see where you're at.
Yeah, I'm having the same trouble here.
Okay, let me, okay. So, okay, yeah, so filter, choose, there you go, right there.
Oh.
Yeah. So you gotta do one more click, it's just choose by, I think on the back, yeah. So yeah, there you go, the greater than, and then just type in the value, yeah.
And then watch.
Okay, there you go, yeah, it's limited.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there you
Okay,
go.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, question?
Yeah, I couldn't do this filtering.
I'm sorry?
I couldn't do the greater than.
Okay,
bit
click
because
in the,
everything disappeared when I
okay,
was
well click in the table. Okay, and then we'll go ahead, let's go to the total column and click on the drop down, and then we'll choose, which is choose by greater than, then type in the number that you want there, press enter, and let's see, press enter, it didn't accept that. Oh, let's turn on the select all. And then, let's see, type in the number up there again. Press enter. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and not sure what's going on with that. Tell you what, let me, rather than spend cost time on that, let me see if we can't troubleshoot that. It looks like you're doing everything right. I don't know what the matter is with that one. Okay. Let me follow up at the end of class and see if I can't figure out why it's not working for you guys.
So it doesn't make sense. They are all stages because, yeah, it works.
You got what? So
Yeah.
what was the hitch?
The problem was that they were all greater than 10. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
like-
All right. So it was
everything's
filter.
safe,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, there you go. Okay. Duh. Thank you for the solution there. Okay. All right. So you're filtering, and that didn't clear anything out. Everything met the test. Okay. All right. All right. Another one of life's mysteries solved. Okay. So are we all good with this? Yeah. Go ahead.
So if you want to go back and change that value number, you should just take a step back with it.
I'm sorry. We changed which is that?
If you want to change that, the lesser than value number,
Oh, the filter.
how do you go back?
Yeah, so I can always go, I can click on the column heading again, and I can go back to number filters and just go greater than and just change, you just want to change it to another value? Yeah. Is that what you need?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to go, I think I'll turn the filtering off. I'm going to go to the total column, click on the drop down, and there's an option here to clear filter. So I'll just click on that, and that gets me back to my complete list, okay? So what else? You guys have any other questions on party planning? You're all good with that? Okay, so this is your shopping list. Go down to Ralph's and knock yourself out, okay? So we're going to go on to something else, unless you guys have any other questions on this one. We go ahead and save this so you have this file later on to reference after class. I'm going to go ahead and just save, and you can save it wherever you want. I'll save it on my, I'm going to save mine on my desktop. And I'll go ahead and save it as an Excel file, and I think I'll just call the file party. Okay? So I'm saving the file, and so unless there's any other questions after I've saved this file, I think I'll close it. So I'm going to go to the File tab and choose Close.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
How do you clear that filter?
Say that again?
How do you clear the filter?
Oh, just click on the drop down at the top of the column, and you should see an option to clear filter.
That's great.
You know what? Okay, you got a different language from that.
Yeah.
You guys, so,
You can use the
you know, okay, you're right. On the Mac, there might not be an option for that. So. Is there a?
The filters are clear.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's
Otherwise,
okay.
you would see this button.
Yeah, and in her case, it's okay. All right. So before class, we put up a link, and I asked you guys to navigate to that website. So you should have a screen that looks something like this. Actually, the window might be a little bit different. We've got some different folders here. Okay, and we're going to get into some advanced formulas right now, and kind of take a look at how we can extend Excel's functionality. So let's go into the advanced formulas folder. Okay, just click on advanced formulas, and then we don't want to just click on the link here. Hang on a minute before we go too much further. We want to work with this advanced formulas file, but we don't want to just click on it. The deal is, if you just click on this link, I've got this in a cloud drive for OneDrive. You guys have, I think, actually with the Microsoft Office accounts that you guys have, I think you all have a OneDrive space, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you guys can store stuff on your OneDrive with the Office 365 subscription that you have through SC. Now, here's the deal. If you just click on a file here, it will automatically fire up the Excel file in a browser version of Excel called Excel Online. And that's cool because you can work with your Excel files pretty much on any device, on your phone, on a tablet, even where you don't have Excel fired up. The deal, though, is Excel Online is kind of a simplified version of Excel. It doesn't have all the functionality. So that's why I don't want you to click on it here. So what we want to do is just choose that advanced formulas file. And then once you've got it chosen, up at the top, there's an option to download. If I choose download, that will let me open it in Excel rather than opening it in Office Online. So when I click on download after I've chosen the file, you may get a dialog box like this, and we just want to use the open option to open the file, and that should fire it up in Excel rather than Excel Online. Okay? And once you open the file, if you get a security message here, we're going to click on the enable editing option at the very top there. Okay? And if anybody has any issue pulling the file up, I do have a couple of thumb drives that I can distribute here. So is everybody cool with this, or anybody need any help? You want the thumb drive? Oh. Need help? Oh, you're looking at, okay, you know what, I can just give you, you want to just grab a friend and thumb drive. That make it easier. So I think on the thumb drive there's a folder called Excel L2. If you just click into that folder, you'll see the advanced formulas file. Okay, just go ahead and pull that up. All right, so now we're going to take a look at a feature in Excel called named ranges. And named ranges let me give a descriptive name to different parts of a workbook. So named ranges are cool because we can use range names to quickly navigate around a very large workbook. Also, range names are cool. They make it easy to build formulas. Okay, so let me show you some different ways to create range names. I want to create a descriptive range name for the data I have for column B here. So I'm going to highlight from cell B2 all the way down to cell B5. I don't want to, in this case, I'm not including my total row, just rows 2 through 5 for each of my different sales groups. Okay, so I've got my data highlighted. Once I've selected data to give it a descriptive range name, one way to do it is to go up to this box in the corner here. If you hover over it, you can see they call that the name box. So I'm going to click in that name box, and I can just start typing the name that I want to give to this data. So there's a few rules for naming a range that you want to know about. The first is, it's pretty easy to remember. Remember, you want to start with a letter. You can't have any spaces in a range name. And you can't have a range name that's the same as a cell address. So like I've got a cell called A1. I can't have a range name that's the same as that. And oh yeah, the other thing is you can't have a range name that's more than 255 characters. But that's like never a problem, right? But I'm just telling you that's the rules, okay? Anyway, so here I'm going to go ahead and just start typing Q1. Okay, and remember, no spaces. So I'm typing Q1 without any spaces. And after I've typed in the range name, you got to remember to press the Enter key. Sometimes I see people type in a range name and they forget to press the Enter key to complete that. Okay, so after you've typed in the range name, press the Enter key, and that's it. You've just created a range name. So now let's see if you go ahead and click your cursor in a blank cell, and then go back up to the name box and click on the drop-down arrow that appears to the right. And oh, cool! There's your range name. You can just click on that range name that you just created. And boom, see how it navigates you back to that part of the workbook really quickly? You guys are getting into it. This is the fun stuff with Excel, okay? So is that, that's kind of cool. Now check this out, you guys. A lot of times we've got, you know, when you created your workbook, we've already got good descriptive names for our column headings and our row headings. So I want you guys to see how you can manually type in a range name. But there's another cool trick you can do to tell Excel, take whatever's at the top of the column or at the beginning of the row and use that for my range name. So let's see how you can do that. I'm going to go ahead and click on the cell that says Q2, and I want to highlight all the data over to column E down to row 5. So I can click and drag, but another cool trick, if I want to highlight a larger data set, I can click in the first cell, then hold the Shift key on my keyboard, and as I hold the Shift key, I'm going to click in the opposite corner. So I've clicked in cell C1, now I'm going to Shift click in cell E5, and that's just a handy way to grab a bigger data set, okay, rather than dragging across the whole thing. Okay, now that I've got the data and my column headings highlighted, let's check out the Formulas tab. So if I click on the Formulas tab, in the Formulas tab you can see there's this Define Names group here. And one of the options in the Define Names group is Create from Selection. So I selected some data, and now I'm going to click on the Create from Selection option on the Formulas tab. And Excel pops me into this dialog box. It recognizes that the stuff in the top row looks a little bit different, so it guesses that I want to use whatever's in the top row for my range names. Okay? And I'm just going to go ahead and click on OK. And now check it out. If you go up to the name box in the upper left corner and click on the drop down, you've quickly created range names for all the 4 quarters. Okay? So kind of ooh and ah, right? Okay. All right. All right, so that was so much fun. I can tell you guys are having fun with this. Let's create some range names for our row headings. So I'm going to click on the cell that says Northeast, and then I'll use the Shift key trick again with Northeast highlighted. I'm going to Shift click on the Q4 Southwest data in cell E5, and now I want to pick up what is at the top of the beginning of the row here and use those for my range names. So the same trick, I'll click on Create from Selection, and now it notices the stuff in the first column looks different, so it guesses that's what you want to use for your range names. I'll click on OK, and if you go up to the name box, sweet, I've got 8 range names I created real quickly. Okay, so you can use these range names to navigate around the workbook. We're going to take a look in a minute at how you can use these range names in your formulas. But what if I've got a bunch of range names and I want to figure out what they refer to? Maybe in a workbook that somebody else created, I realize they're using range names. How could I find out what all these range names refer to? I could click on each one to see what gets highlighted, but that'd be really tedious. Or what if I want to change what the range name refers to? If I added some more data over to the right, and I want to say now I want these range names to include some other columns. So if you want to find out what a range name refers to or make changes to it, on the Formulas tab, check out the Name Manager. If you click on the Name Manager on the Formulas tab, that will open up a dialog box that shows you a list of all the range names you've got and tells you what they refer to. Okay? And if you want to make changes to any of those range names, you can just bug on the button marked Edit. When you click on the Edit button, it pops you into another dialog box here, which lets you change the name if you want to, or you can extend what the range name refers to. Okay?
I couldn't find it on mine.
Let's see. So, where is it here? Yours is, yeah, define names. Yeah, define names, and then, yeah, go there. Yeah, you can click on, yeah. So, yeah, some of this stuff is slightly different on the Mac versus the PC. Sorry for the confusion there. What's that? I think you have to go, yeah, define names on the Mac. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah, sorry about that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of here. And I'm going to close the Name Manager. Now, I want to take a look at how we can use these range names to build a formula. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead, I want to get my East Coast total sales here. And the East Coast sales is actually the Northeast plus the Southeast. Okay? And so, in this case, it's pretty simple. All this stuff is on the same sheet. The using range names is particularly cool when you want to pull information from one sheet to the other. So let's pretend maybe this data is on another sheet and we want to summarize it here. Okay, so I'm going to use the sum function. So I'm already on the Formulas tab. I can just use the Auto Sum button on the Formulas tab. And so when I do that, Excel creates a sum function and it just makes a guess at where the data is that you want to add up. It guessed wrong. So here, when I'm in the middle of editing a formula, I can manually type in the range name, or on the Formulas tab, there's this option to Use in Formula. I can click on Use in Formula. That gives me a list of my range names. For the East Coast, I want the Northeast and the Southeast. So I'll click on Northeast. Okay? And then with our functions, if we're going to use more than one range, or more than one argument, we need to separate each of the different arguments with a comma. So I'm going to type in a comma on the keyboard. Okay? And I could choose that Use in Formula again, or you can always manually type in a range name. So check this out. If I've got Northeast, I'm just going to start typing the first few characters for Southeast. So if I just type in S, it starts to show me all the different functions in Excel that begin with that. If I type in SO, it'll show me my ranges. So I've got Southeast and Southwest here. Once I've got Southeast highlighted, after I just typed in the first few characters, I can press the Tab key on my keyboard to do an autocomplete. I don't even need to type the whole thing. As long as I've got it highlighted, I just press Tab and it does an autocomplete. Okay? So I want to get the sum of the Northeast and the Southeast. I press Enter, and cool, there's my grand total. Okay? So range names are a pretty cool feature. Okay. Anybody have any questions on what we're doing with range names? So no questions means total comprehension, or just you're so total confused you don't know where to start. I'm going to assume it's all clicking here. So hopefully we're going at a pace we're not boring you guys, or I don't want to go too slow and I don't want to go too fast. So you guys have to give me some feedback, and if you have questions, I definitely want to make sure that you feel free asking questions at any point. And I want to make sure this shouldn't be just theory as we go through this. Think about how you can apply this to the kinds of data that you might need to manipulate. And so, yeah, go ahead.
So what if you have several data about Northeast in several sheets? How do you compile everything in one?
Okay, we're not going to do that with range names, but what I'm going to do next is we're going to do some 3D formulas. So let's go through this and see if this doesn't answer some of those questions. Take a look, you guys, at the next tab here. Go to the Summary tab, And here's the deal. On the summary tab, we've got some labels, and I don't have any numbers. What I want to do is summarize data on this sheet. I've got, after the summary sheet, I've got 4 quarterly tabs here. And so take a minute to look at what's on those different sheets, quarter 1, 2, 3, 4. Basically, you click on those different tabs. It's all some different data, right? It's all laid out the same, but we've got different numbers. The numbers are different in each sheet, right? So what we want to do is do a summary of the stuff that's on the 4 quarter sheets. We want to show the total on the summary sheet. Okay, so a lot of times, you know, you get all this detailed data. You're generating a report for senior management. Senior management doesn't want to see all the little details. They just want to see the big picture. Okay, so let's take a look. I want to show you guys a couple of different ways to do what some people call 3D formulas. We want to pull stuff from one sheet and summarize it on another sheet. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my summary tab. And one way to get a total is to just do a simple addition formula. Okay, and you guys have all built formulas, I'm sure, where you're clicking on cells on within one sheet. So when I'm doing formulas across several sheets, it's the same concept, except we're flipping the pages as we're building the formula. So sometimes that gets people a little confused. Okay, so like always, I'm going to start my formula with the equal symbol. So I've got my cursor where I want to see the total for Northeast Consulting for all the quarters. I'm going to just type in the equal symbol, and after I type in the equal symbol, I'm going to click on the quarter 1 tab, and after the equal and the quarter 1 tab, check out the formula bar. It shows me the name of the sheet with an exclamation point as a separator. Okay, so now that I'm on the quarter 1 sheet, I'm going to point at my Northeast Consulting number and click. Okay, so now I've got a reference in my formula that says take whatever's on the quarter 1 sheet in cell B2. Okay, so after I've got that value referenced, I'm going to type in the plus symbol on the keyboard. And after I tap the plus symbol on the keyboard, I'm going to navigate to the quarter 2 sheet. And on the quarter 2 sheet, I'm going to click on cell B2 where I've got my Northeast Consulting number. So now I've got cell B2 from the first and the second quarter, and we're just going to repeat that for the third and fourth quarter. One of the things I see people get into trouble all the time on this as they're going back and forth, they click on the sheet, but then they forget to click on the cell on the sheet. So that you got to not only select the sheet, but the cells that you want to reference. Okay, so after I've got B2 in quarter 1 and 2, I'm going to hit the plus symbol, and you guessed it, we're going to navigate to Q3, and in Q3 we're going to click on Northeast Consulting. I'll type in the plus again and go to Q4, and I'll click on my Northeast Consulting. So I've got a reference to B2 for all 4 quarters. I'm going to press the Enter key, and boom, you should get your grand total for all 4 sheets. Okay? Everybody good with that? Okay, and then we could just copy that formula across and down. That wouldn't be any big deal. Now, I wanted to go over that way to do it. I'd have to do it this way if the data was in different cells in each sheet. So if in the quarter 1 sheet it was in cell B2, but maybe in the quarter 2 sheet it was in cell K5 or whatever, I'd have to go to the specific cells. But the way this data is laid out, we've got the same number, the same value in the same cell on all the sheets. It's always in cell B2. So rather than having to go to each sheet, I want to show you a cool way that we could just grab all the sheets and say, give me the sum of B2 on all those sheets. Okay, so this assumes the data is in the same place on all the sheets. So that kind of goes to, as you design your spreadsheet in the first place, you want to think about how you're going to want to summarize the data later on, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just undo the formula I just did. So you can use the undo button or use Command Z on a Mac or Control Z on a PC. So this time I'm going to use another approach. I'm back on the Summary tab. I've got my cursor where I want my total Northeast Consulting number to show up. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Auto Sum button this time. When I click on Auto Sum, there's no numbers on this sheet, so Excel doesn't know where to get the values from. So once I've got the sum function going, in the middle of editing the sum function, I'm going to click on the quarter 1 tab. Okay. So now my formula has a reference to quarter 1. I want to grab all the sheets. So remember a little while ago we used the shift key to select multiple cells. you can use the same trick to select multiple sheets. So I clicked on the quarter 1 sheet, and I'm going to hold the shift key down. As I hold the shift key, I'm going to click on the quarter 4 sheet. So now I've got this reference that says quarter 1 colon quarter 4. So I'm referring to all those sheets. Okay? And now that I've got all the sheets that I want to work with selected, now I'm going to click on the cell on those sheets that I want to summarize. So I'm going to click on cell B2. So I'm just saying, give me the sum of B2 for all those sheets. Okay, so in this case, I didn't need to go to each individual sheet. This is cool. Some of you guys may have these data sets where you've got 10, 20 or more different sheets, and you don't have to go to each sheet to snag the data. So here I'll go ahead and press enter, and you should get exactly the same number that you did with the addition formula. Do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry, this wasn't working for me on the Mac.
Okay.
The shift and the Q4. So I'm
Okay,
not sure
let's
what-
see what's going on.
So it's inserting here.
Okay, so let's go. Yeah, you actually, I think you have that. So click. Okay, so click on. Actually, I'm going to suggest we start again. Just go ahead and let's just press escape to start over. Okay, so let's go auto sum. Okay, now click on Q1. Okay, now hold the shift key and click on Q4. Okay, now click on cell B2.
Did it actually work? Okay. B2 right here.
B2, yeah, the first number, yeah. There you go. Press enter and you're done. There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it may just be the order. It looks like you may have clicked on the first sheet and then clicked on the cell. So the first thing we need to do is highlight all the sheets, and then when we've got the sheets highlighted, then select the cell. So it's just it's all in the wrist action. Yeah. Question or?
I think, did it, then when I was putting pictures, it just showed up as, like, equals
It's hard for me to see.
oh, sorry. So,
Okay, there helps. Okay. So it looks like you're referencing this sheet. So you know, let's start all over again. Let's press escape. Escape. Shift. Okay. So click the auto sum button. Then click on quarter 1. Good. Now hold the shift key and click on quarter 4. Now go ahead. Let's see. No, actually, something's. Let's escape one more time. Try it. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Auto sum. Now click quarter 1. Okay. Now hold the shift key and click on quarter 4. For some reason, it wants to get a summary sheet too. Which is not. I'm not sure what's going on with this exactly. Let's try one more time.
okay.
Auto sum. Okay, and then that's good. And then you're holding shift, right? Yeah, shift, and then click on quarter 4. For some reason, it wants to keep picking up the summary sheet too. That is really. We go back and just click on the quarter 1 sheet.
Okay.
Now shift click again on quarter 4. There we go. Okay, now then click on the cell that you want.
Okay.
Press enter.
And then,
Just press the enter key. Press enter. For some reason. I think there's something weird on this machine because you should be able to press enter. I'm gonna click on the checkbox. There you go. So
Okay.
something weird with the enter key should be able to press it and say I'm done with editing the formula, but so.
yeah, I don't know, that worked for other stuff, but, okay, thank you.
Your machine needs an exorcism. Just kidding. Just kidding. All right, so yeah, here I can, once I've got my formula for the first item here, I can just use the fill handle and drag across for the first row. And then remember, if I want to copy down because I have data in an adjacent column, I don't need to drag all the way down. I can just point at the fill handle in the corner, do a double click, and it copies the data down for me. Okay? So that's a little bit about doing, like I say, what people call 3D formulas, where we're pulling stuff from sheet to sheet. And if you know how to do it when you're pulling from sheet to sheet within one workbook, you can do the same thing to pull data from different workbooks. If you have both workbooks open, you can just navigate to another workbook and click on that. Now, one thing to think about, I was doing a class a couple months ago and for a corporate group, and I had an IT guy in the class, and I was telling him, so you can do links. They were asking me, can we do links across different workbooks? And I said, yeah, you can do that. And the IT guy immediately said, don't tell them that. Don't tell them that. You shouldn't do that. So the thing is, you can create links across different workbooks, but that depends on that other workbook being in exactly the same location and it has exactly the same name. If somebody moves the file, renames it, changes the name of the directory it's in or the drive mapping, it blows the whole thing up. So this IT guy had had several experiences at this corporation where people had these really complicated spreadsheets that were pulling things from multiple workbooks, and when they changed their system, it blew the whole thing up. So think about that. If you own the files and you control all the files that are on your machine, it's okay to have links between different files, but if you're depending on stuff on a network location to be there, that might not be a good idea. Okay, so that's just kind of a little background when you think about linking files. Did you have a question or comment?
So I was just going to ask that we can only use this formula when all the boxes are the same.
Exactly, yeah. This way, I'm assuming the data is in cell B2 on all the sheets, whereas that first way we did it, I could pull data from any cell. Yeah, so, yeah, exactly. All right, so let's see. Let's go ahead and just keep going. I want to get into some advanced functions with you guys. So you may know that functions are pre-built formulas in Excel, and the most common one is the sum function for adding up data sets. But there's many hundreds of different functions in Excel to do math, statistical analysis. We can do financial analysis. And what I want to show you now are some different ways to manipulate text. Okay, so let's go to the employee requirement, the employee list tab. Okay, and if I click on the employee list tab, the scenario here is I've got a list of employees and I need to clean up some of the data here. So you guys recognize some of these names?
Yeah.
You do? Okay. So, but we don't have Warren Beatty on here, do we? So the winner is, right? All right, so here's the scenario. We just have some people who've been nominated for Academy Awards in recent years. So here's the scenario. These are the employees, and I get this raw data, and right now I've got whoever keyed the stuff in typed in all these names in all uppercase, and they put the first name in one column and the last name in another column, which is good if I wanted to sort the data, but my manager wants me to take the first and last name together and put them together in a new cell. Okay, so and we need to fix the capitalization. So what I want to do is take the data that I have on the employee list tab and clean it up and display it on the requirement tab. Okay, so that's the scenario. So how many of you guys, if your manager asks you to do that, would just roll up your sleeves and start retyping all the names? Okay, so I want to show you some different ways to do some of this, to manipulate this text with some of the functions that are built into Excel. Okay, so let's go to the requirement tab, and actually the first thing on the requirement tab I want to do is take whatever the employee IDs are on this employee list sheet in column D and display those on the requirement tab. So I'm going to go to my requirement tab, and we want to create a cell reference to that other sheet. So just like we did earlier, I'm going to type in the equal symbol, and after I type the equal symbol in cell A2 on my requirement tab, I'm going to navigate back to the employee list tab, and in the employee list tab I'm going to click on Nicole's employee ID, which is in cell D2. So I'm just saying take whatever's on that sheet in cell D2 and display it on the other sheet. So after I've created that cell reference, I'm going to press the enter key. And cool, I've got her ID number shown here. Now, the nice thing about this is if I change it on the other sheet, it automatically updates it here. Okay, so because I don't have any data already in an adjacent column here, I can't do the double click trick, so we actually have to drag down here. I'm going to point at the fill handle and in the lower right corner of cell A2 and just drag down to row 21. Okay, so now I've got everybody's employee ID. Okay. All right, now I want to display the first and last name in the full name column. Okay, and so I want to join several pieces of text together. Okay, so computer jocks have this term for joining text together. They call it concatenation. Okay, so when you guys are hanging out later today and your friends are asking, so what'd you do in that Excel class? You can say, we were doing concatenation, and everybody will be very impressed. It's just a $5 word for gluing several pieces of text together, but it sounds really impressive, don't you think? All right, so there's a couple of different ways to do this in Excel, and I want to show you both ways so you guys can decide which way you find easiest. And then I also want you to understand so that if you get a spreadsheet from somebody else that's using one way or the other way, you'll know what's going on. Okay? So I'm going to click my cursor where I want to see the full name. And one way to join these pieces together is with a function. Another way is to use a special kind of formula. So let's start with a function. So we've got my cursor where I want to see the full name, and I'm going to go to the Formulas tab. On the Formulas tab, we've got this cool feature called the Function Library, which organizes all of the hundreds of functions that are built into Excel by different categories. So I want to do something with words. I'm going to go to the text category. So if I go to the text category and click, I get a drop-down list that shows me all the different things I can do with text functions in Excel. And you can just point at these functions to find out what they do. So if I point out, what's this clean function do? If you just hover over it, you get a little pop-up that tells you that removes non-printing characters. Okay? So this is a cool way to kind of just explore what functions are available, just kind of browse for what's available. There's a concatenate function there, and if you point at concatenate, it'll tell you what that does. It's going to join several pieces of text together. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and click on the concatenate function, and the screens look slightly different on the PC and the Mac, but the concept is really the same. So on the PC, I get this function arguments dialog box. On the Mac, you get a formula builder screen, and basically we can build the function by just filling in the blanks. Okay? So right now, Excel is waiting for me to tell it where the text is that I want to join together. So with my cursor in the text 1 box, I'm going to navigate over to my employee list tab. And in the employee list tab, I'm going to click on Nicole's first name. Okay, so I just want to grab whatever's in cell A2 on the employee list sheet. And then after I've got Nicole's first name, I want to add a space. I don't want to put her first and last name together without a space. So for text 2, I'll click in the text 2 box, and I'm just going to tap the space bar on my keyboard. Okay? And after I tap the space bar on my keyboard while I'm in text 2, I'm going to click in the text 3 box. And notice when I navigate out of the text 2 box, it automatically put the quotes in there. So as you do this in the dialog box, you don't need to type the quotes, it'll add those for you. So I've got her first name, a space, and now in the text 3 box, I'll navigate over to the employee list tab, and I'm going to click on Nicole's last name. So I'm just joining those 3 pieces of text together. Okay? And you should be able to now hit the OK button, and boom, we've got Nicole's full name displayed. Okay? Is it all working? No? Who needs help?
There won't be space between.
There's not a space?
I mean, space between last name and first name.
Yeah. So I just put that in a let me see over here.
You can.
Okay, so go ahead and let's go to text 2 here. Get rid of that. Just put that. Get rid of that and just press the space bar on the keyboard. Just put space. Okay, and then hit the plus button here. There you go. Now go get her last name. Yes, slightly different on the Mac here.
So what's that, the order there?
Yeah, let's see, go back in there one more time. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. Yeah, space. Type the space. Yeah, then and click your cursor there. Then go back to. Yeah. For some reason it's.
Okay, let me try it
Yeah,
again.
but you get the idea. Yeah, you guys doing okay with that?
Yeah. So I'm having the same issue that she was having.
Okay, so
Here we go. We want to do requirements.
go ahead and. There you go.
Alright, so here we go. Full name.
Insert function.
Alright, so
Text
here we go.
1 is her first name. Okay, then 2, get text 2, hit space,
Right.
click on the plus,
Right.
click it, make sure your cursor's in that, right there, okay, yeah.
Okay.
And actually, you know what, on the Mac, you may need to type the quote thing in there.
Well, hold on one second. To go with this.
Yeah.
Did I give you the quotes now?
No, it's not, you know what,
So
actually, you might need to type the quote.
Quote, space, quote. Okay.
Yeah.
There.
And then,
Now.
then go over to the. Yeah, there you go. For some reason it's adding in Yeah, it's because it's.
It eliminates things free.
So there's something on these Macs. There's something kind of weird going on. Are all you guys on the Macs having the same issue?
Yeah, I think it's
Weird issues.
Yeah. You know, I think.
I was able to do some people were able to do
Okay,
it.
you know what? I think what you guys might need to do here. I'm not sure because I haven't seen this. I'm gonna guess you may need to. There may be an update for Excel that you need to do from Microsoft to.
Just downloaded this right before class.
Yeah. So well, sometimes the download doesn't have all the updates too. You gotta do another refresh there. So I'm not sure what is the deal on this, but you if nothing else, you guys, well, hardcore Excel geeks, check this out, you guys. Hardcore Excel geeks who do this all day long, instead of filling in the dialog box like we did, they actually manually type this stuff in. So I wanted to show you guys an easier way to do it, just kind of building it, filling in the blanks. So I'm not sure what's going on. Some of you are able, like because yours worked okay.
Yeah.
So some of you guys did it work okay? So
It's just a little glitchy.
yeah. Sorry about that. I'm not sure. I don't have a magic wand on that one.
Yeah. We can look at it afterwards.
Okay. But the bigger picture is here. You guys understand what concatenation is, and so on. So, all right. Let me show you another way to do it, and I know this way is going to work. Well, I'm actually relatively certain this way is going to work. So check this out. Instead of using the concatenate function, an alternative way to join several pieces of text together that some people use is to use the and symbol on your keyboard in a formula. So you know the ampersand symbol? I think of that as a piece of glue. I can actually glue the contents of several cells together using that technique. So I think this will work even if the function arguments dialog box did not. So let's go ahead and I'm going to delete what I have for the full name here and start all over again. So instead of using the concatenate function to join the text together, let's create a formula. So with my cursor in the full name box, I'm going to start my formula like always with the equal symbol. And then after I type in the equal symbol, I'm going to go navigate over to the employee list tab. And on the employee list tab, I'm going to click on Nicole's first name. Okay. So I'm making reference to her name. Now, after I've got her first name, I want to add a space. So to glue, to take her first name and a space and glue them together, I'm going to type in the and symbol. So I'm going to type in the and symbol on the keyboard. And then after I type in the and symbol, I'm going to type in quote, space, quote. So any text you literally want to show, you have to enclose in quotes. So after I type in the and symbol, I'll go quote, space, quote. So all I'm doing there is saying take whatever's in A2 and join a space together with that. Okay? Now I want to join her last name together, so I need another piece of glue. I'm going to type in the ampersand again, the and symbol. And after I've typed in the and symbol, I'm going to go ahead and click on Nicole's last name. So I'm just saying take whatever's in A2, add a space to that, and then add whatever's in cell B2. Okay? And if you press the Enter key, that should give you exactly the same result that you got with the concatenate function. So two different ways to do the same thing, okay? And you'll see some people do it one way, some people do the other way, but you guys can choose whichever way you want for your own stuff, but then also if you get a spreadsheet that somebody else has done and you see those ampersands there, you go, oh, that's just the old concatenation trick. I know what they're doing there, right? All right, so let's see, I can copy that down and get everybody's name. Now, the other thing we want to do with these names, you guys, is show show this properly capitalized. So there's another cool function available in Excel called the proper function, and the proper function just simply takes whatever text you have and converts it so the first letter of each word is capitalized, everything else is lowercase. So this one's pretty easy. Rather than look it up, I'm just going to type it in. So I've got Nicole's full name showing on my requirement tab. I'm going to go up on the formula bar and I want to make some changes to my formula, so I'm going to click right after the equal symbol. And basically what I want to do is take this expression that I've created and wrap the proper function around that. So right after the equal symbol, I'm going to type in the word proper and then an open parentheses, okay? And then, so I've got my proper function and it wants to know what text I want to work with, which is the expression I created. So for all of our functions, we need to have an open parentheses and then a closed parentheses at the very end. So I'll go ahead and click at the very end of my expression and type in a closed parentheses and press enter. And cool, it's got Nicole's full name properly capitalized, and then I should be able to copy that down to the other rows.
How do you add it to the concatenate formula?
Okay, so you could take the concatenate function and just wrap the proper function around that too.
Okay.
So let me just demonstrate that real quickly. Would you like that? Or does the concept make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Let me know if it works. If you want me to take a look at it. All right. So now you guys are all concatenators. So I don't have an exercise on it today, but I want to mention that in addition to the proper function, there's also an upper function which will convert all the text to uppercase. Okay, and then there's the upper function, and there's also a lower function which will convert all text to lowercase. So you may be able to use those for some of your work. Did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to know how you do it when you use the concat function.
Okay, let me.
How you apply proper function.
Yeah, and actually, the Mac that doesn't have the.
This is Windows.
What's that?
Windows.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So let me demonstrate that with the concatenate function. So instead of using the and symbol here, so I'll just go ahead and clear this out. So I'm going to go ahead and actually let me just demonstrate. You know, people who use these functions all the time, you can just type this stuff in. Watch me. I'm going to create the concatenate function from scratch by just typing it in. So I can type in equal, start typing the concatenate function. Okay, open parentheses, and then I'm just going to click on the text I want to work with. I'll go to employee list, click on Nicole's first name, comma, and then after her first name, I'm going to type in quote, space quote, then comma, and then her last name. Okay, so now I've got the concatenate function. Okay, and then you want to apply the proper function with that. So what we can do is basically wrap the proper function around there. So just like we did with the other expression, I'm going to go up to the formula bar after the equal in front of where it says concatenate, and I can just type in proper here, open parentheses, and then I need to balance my parentheses for the proper function, so I'll click at the end of the expression and type in close parentheses. Okay? So I'm just saying do this function and then do this other function on the result of that function. Does that make sense? Okay, and check it out, you guys. You can get really elaborate with functions. You can put a whole bunch of them together to do some really complex stuff. And you know, I've been using Excel for a long time, and I still see people put combinations of functions together in very clever ways. And I look at it like, wow, I wouldn't have thought of that, but that it works. Okay, and the other almost kind of scary thing is that you can put over 8,000 characters in a cell. So people create these crazy long expressions to do really, really complex stuff. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just copy that down. And I've got everybody's name all properly spelled. There's another cool feature. I wanted you guys to see how to do this manually, but there's another cool feature that's available. It's only in the newer versions of Excel. It's only starting with Excel 2013 for the PC and then 2016 for the Mac and the PC. There's a cool feature called Flash Fill. And Flash Fill, Excel watches what you're typing in and makes a guess on what you're trying to do. This will only work on the same sheet as the data is. So in this case, I want to pull the data from one sheet to the other. Let me just give you a quick demonstration of how Flash Fill works. I'm going to navigate back to my employee list tab, and I'm on my employee list tab. I'm going to go over to the right. I've got a blank column over on the right here, and just like earlier, I want to take Nicole's first name and last name, join them together in a cell, and fix the capitalization. So just watch me demonstrate this. I'll talk you through it, then you can try it. So I'm over in a column, and again, I have to have the data on the same sheet. But watch what happens. If I just start typing Nicole Kidman, so I'm typing the data in the way I want it to go. I type 1, and then I'm going to type in the next guy's name, Jeff. Look what happens there. Just as I start to type the first part of his name, Excel says, oh, I think I see what he's doing there, and he probably wants to do this for all the names. So it guesses and shows me the rest of it there. So that's the feature called Flash Fill. But again, that only works if you're on the same sheet as the data. Okay, so that's a new feature they've added to Excel. So that's another way to. It's kind of a cool trick. It's not working on the Mac side. Am I a liar? Did they not add that to the Mac version?
Can you do that again?
Well, it should. Yeah, so I should be able to just type in the full name here. I'm typing in Nicole Kidman, and then as soon as I type in the second name, if I start typing Jeff's name, I thought that's it should show me the second guy. Then I can just press enter. It doesn't autocomplete for me. No, okay. So maybe that's a Windows version of program only. Never mind. All right. So let's see. The next thing I want to do, you guys, is let's go over to the next column here in the requirements sheet. Okay, and yeah, there's you guys got that thumb drive floating around? Okay, good. Okay, so the next thing we want to do some more manipulation of text. And so what we're going to do here, we need to generate some network IDs for these guys. Okay, so the rules for network IDs are we want to take the first letter of their first name and then their full last name to generate a network ID. So for example, Nicole Kidman's network ID would be N Kidman, Jeff Bridges would be J Bridges, and so on. So what I need to do is extract just the first letter of their first name and then join their last name onto that. Okay, so another function we have in Excel is called the left function. With the left function, we can specify what text we want to work with and how many characters starting from the left we want to extract. Okay, so let's try that. With our cursor where we want the ID to show here, I'm going to go on the Formulas tab here. I'm going to click on the text category again. And the text category, I'm going to look down for the left function. Click on that. And then I'm basically just going to fill in what text I want to work with and the number of characters I want to extract. So the text I want to work with is going to be Nicole's first name. Go to the Employee List tab. Click on Nicole's first name. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and specify how many characters from the beginning of Nicole's name I want to extract. And I think the default is it assumes just the first character. So if you leave the number of characters blank, it'll assume that. I'm just going to type that in though for right now. So I'm just saying take whatever's in cell A2 and extract the first character. Okay. If I go ahead and click on OK, it shows me just the letter N in Nicole's name. Okay. Now if I wanted to join her last name to there, we can use the and symbol again, just like we did earlier. So I'm going to go to the end of the left function that I just created up on the formula bar, click at the end of the expression, type the and symbol on my keyboard, and after I've typed the and symbol to join things together, I'm going to go over to the Employee List tab, and in the Employee List tab I'll click on Nicole's last name. So I'm just saying take whatever's in the first character of A2 plus everything in cell B2 and join those together. If I press enter, it creates what her network ID is, and I should be able to just copy that down. Okay, so just some different things we can do with text. Lots of other functions in Excel, but the bigger picture here is you guys know how to look up functions and some different ways to manipulate text. So sometimes you get a data set that needs to be cleaned up, and those are some cool tricks for doing that. Let me just take a look at my notes here. We don't have a lot more time left. Does anybody have any questions on anything we're looking at so far, and how you can apply this to any of the data sets that you work with? Let me just make sure I'm covering all the right stuff here. One sec. Where are we at here? Let's look at my notes here. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna see. Okay, so I just want to see how far we got. Yeah, okay, so I think we've got that stuff down for now. Now what I want to do, the next thing I think we want to do on our advanced formulas here, we're going to go to the next tab here. So let's go ahead and click on the next tab, the everybody's favorite topic, employee bonus. Okay, so check this out, you guys. We have a list here with some of my sales guys, and they're selling into 4 different areas: parts, accessories, service, and consulting. We're adding up their total sales. If you click on the total sales, you can look up on the formula bar and see they're just doing a simple sum function. Okay? And then each guy has a goal, and what we need to do right now is calculate what their goal bonus is going to be. So the rules for their goal bonus are, we want to look at compare their total sales to their goal, and if they have total sales greater than or equal to their goal, then they get a bonus of 1% of their total sales. If they didn't meet their goal, they get nada. They don't get a bonus. Okay, so we want to write a formula that's going to do that calculation for us. There's a function in Excel called the if function, and we can do some conditional logic with the if function. I can say there's three parts to the if function. The first is some kind of logical test. So logical test is something that can be either true or false. I can say, does this number equal this number? Is this greater than or less than or whatever? Something that's either going to be true or false. So the first thing is a logical test. The second part of the if function is, what do you want to do if that logical test is true? And then the third part is, what do you want to do if the logical test is false? Okay, so we're going to use that to calculate the goal bonus. So let's go ahead and click our cursor where we want to see the bonus for the first guy. And the if function is an example of a logical function. So I'm going to go on the formulas tab to the logical category. And there's a list of all the logical functions available in Excel. I'm going to go ahead and choose if. Okay? And we get a screen that lets us fill in, just like the other functions, what we want to do. So the first thing I want to do is create a logical test. I want to know, is this guy's total sales greater than or equal to the goal? So with my cursor in the logical test box, I'm going to click on total sales. And after I've clicked on F6, I'm going to type in greater than, equal. So just type in the greater than or equal to symbols. And I want to compare F6 to the value that I have in cell G6. So after I've typed in greater than or equal to, I'm going to click on the goal value. Okay, I just want to know, the guy, is his total sales greater than his goal? And you can see, in this case, it tells me, yeah, this guy, it's true, he did get more than his, did get total sales greater than his goal. Okay, so now I want to specify, I'm going to go to the value of true box. What do we want to do if that test is true? Well, I want to take whatever his total sales are and multiply it by the bonus rate. So with my cursor in the value of true box, I'm going to click on the total sales for the first guy, F6. Then I'm going to type in the asterisk to multiply. And after I type in the asterisk to multiply, I'm going to bug on the bonus rate in cell H3. Okay, so just F6 times H3. Okay. So now I'm thinking ahead on what I'm doing here, because I'm going to want to copy this formula down to the other rows. And remember what we talked about earlier, this whole concept of relative versus absolute references? So when I copy this formula down to the next row, well, I want the references to F6 and G6 to change to F7 and F8 and so on?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. What about the reference to H3? Do you want that to change as you copy it down to H4 and H5? Okay. So what are we going to do? Dollar signs. Yeah. So the keyboard shortcut on the Mac is Command T. Yeah. And on the PC it's F4. So either way, we want to convert that. So either use the keyboard shortcut, or like I mentioned earlier, if you don't remember the keyboard shortcut, you can always manually type the dollar signs in there. Okay. So I'm saying if the guy got more than his goal, he gets this 1% bonus. Now, if that's not true, if he didn't get sales greater than his goal, he doesn't get a bonus. So I'm going to go to the value of false field and type in 0. Okay? And click on OK. And so this guy gets a nice little bonus. And then because of the way we thought about our formulas, about the relative and absolute references, we should be able to copy this down, and we've got a formula that works on all the rows here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, anybody have any questions on what we're doing with the if function? It doesn't. Let me see. Okay. Okay. So I think we just have too many references here. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. Somehow that we got quotes and quotes in this. Let's get rid of the quotes. Okay, and then get rid of, yeah, there's one more, there's H3, just one, there's too many H3s there. Yeah, get rid of that. Yeah.
Like this?
Yeah, now you got it. Go ahead and press enter. Done, yeah. There we go, yeah, okay, good. And then then try copying that down, and because you have your dollar signs there, it should work for all the other rows. So click on the Autofill Handle, double click. Oh, there you go. Okay. All right, so this is just a simple example of the if function, you guys. You can get really complex with this. So check this out. You can, with the if function, you can actually combine up to 64 different if functions together to do really complex stuff. So I can say, do this test. If it's true, do this, and then if it's not true, if it's false, do another if. So you can test this and test that. So you can do some really, just like real life, it can get really complex, okay? And there's some other related functions. There's a number of other logical functions that you can use together with those. So if I look at the logical category, I've got the AND function where I can test a whole bunch of, I can test up to 255 things and say, is this true, and this true, and this true, and this true? Or there's an OR function. Anyway, lots of really complex things you can do to do some pretty complex logical analysis in a spreadsheet. And these things, I see them used all the time in a business context. Like for example, the people in the entertainment business, they've got all these crazy conditions on royalties. So for example, if the gross is over this much, you get this percentage. If it's over this, you get that percentage. If it's shown so many times on TV, it's this amount and that amount. So they have these really complex contracts, and they write formulas in Excel to do the calculations based on what the contract terms are. So just one example of how you can use some of this logic in a business context. All right, so we're doing okay? Are we having fun yet? Yeah, go ahead.
Can you just show us again how you convert that to the dollar sign?
Oh, you mean the reference to H3?
Yeah.
So okay, on the Mac you can use Command T. On the PC it's F4.
So when you have that cursor over there, you just click F4.
Well, if I'm in the formula dialog box here, when I first click on this cell here, I did F6 times, and then I click on the bonus rate here. When I first click on that, it just says H3, and that's a relative reference, which means when I copy it down, it's going to change to H4 and H5. So, anytime I'm editing a formula with my cursor on the reference to H3, if I press the F4 key, you're going to use it on PC there? Yeah, on the PC, you want to use the F4 key. So I press F4, and that just pops the dollar signs in there for me. Okay? And like I was saying earlier, if you don't remember the F4 trick, you can just go in there and manually type in the dollar signs yourself. Okay, so that's okay, but it's more fun to know the keyboard shortcuts, right?
But the purpose of that is to have a fixed value?
Yeah, the purpose is when I copy that formula down, it won't change.
Right.
So, here, let me go ahead and click on OK to finish that. Now, once I copy this down to the other rows, the first one here, if you look at my formula bar, it's F6 and G6 and then H3. But if I go to the next row, F6 changes to F7 and G7, but the reference to H3, because I've got the dollar signs, doesn't change.
Right.
So if I didn't put the dollar signs in there, I would get error messages. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry if you said this earlier, but the dollar signs where it has to be, does it always have to come before and after the?
Okay, now you can actually get a little tricky because the dollar signs control what's going to change and what's not going to change. So dollar signs says don't change. Let me put up a slide about this topic here, since you guys are asking a few questions. So let me see if I have a couple slides just to review the concepts here. Maybe this will help explain it. Where's my formula on this? Yeah. So check this out: relative, absolute, and mixed cell references. So relative references are the default setting. If you don't do anything, that's what you get. And what that means is when you create a formula that has a reference to another cell, it's based on the relative position between the cell that's got the formula and the cell you're pointing to. So when you copy that, it's going to change the cell reference. Okay, that's the default behavior in Excel. So what we're talking about now is absolute cell references. So in our formula, we're referring to a specific cell address. That means when you copy the formula, the cell reference does not change. And I've just got this right now for the PC side, it's F4, the dollar sign. So A1 is a relative reference, dollar sign A, dollar sign 1 is an absolute reference. So kind of to go into your question, in some situations, you want one item to change and not the other. So we've got what are called mixed references. So here, if I want a relative column, absolute row, so $1, because there's no $sign in front of the column there, if I copy that across to another column, it's going to change from A to B to C. But because there's a $sign in front of the 1 there, as I copy down, the row is going to stay at row 1. Okay? And then absolute column, relative row, $sign in front of the column, but not in front of the row, because there's a $sign in front of the column here. That, you've locked that in, whereas here if I copy down, it doesn't change it. Okay? Does that make sense? So we don't, these aren't used as much, but for some sophisticated business spreadsheets, we do need to use these mixed references. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so who's got any other questions on anything we're doing or not doing? Okay, so, yeah, go ahead.
So often at times at Excel when I'm trying to cut and then paste it to like a different row, sometimes it says that there's an error because the area you're trying to paste is larger than the area you need. How do you deal with that, especially if the data is so big?
I think, well, I have to look at the specific situation to troubleshoot that, but I think you have a bunch of cells that you want to copy somewhere else. You copy them, and then you go over to another part of the workbook. Instead of highlighting a whole range, what I think you want to do is just position your cursor where you want the upper left corner of that stuff to go, and then do a paste. But sometimes if you're trying to highlight a whole area, just click on one cell, which is the target of where you want to go, and I think that will solve that.
And I guess my situation particularly was I just clicked on the entire row.
Yeah, so just click on just one
Just
cell
one
where you
side.
want the upper left corner of it to go, and I think that will take care of that for you. Yeah. All right, good question. Any other questions on any of this fun stuff? No? All right, so I think let's go ahead, and we don't have a lot more time left, but I'm going to save the advanced formulas file. And actually, if you open it from the network drive, you might need to do a save as here. Get back here. Get back to Excel. I don't want all these windows open. All right, so hang on one second. Let me close some windows. So yeah, if you the file that we just worked with, you may need to use the save as command because I think it. Come on. Let me get that close out here. Close all these windows. Excel, my machine is icing up on me here. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and just close any of these files we've got open. If you want to save your changes, go ahead and do that. And I'm gonna navigate back to the OneDrive folder that we started with, and we've been in the advanced formulas folder. The last topic I want to go over with you guys, and we're gonna have to fly over it pretty quickly, but I want to kind of give you the essence of this feature in Excel. I want to go over pivot tables. So pivot tables are really cool. I think they're one of the most powerful features in Excel. I always say they're one of the reasons that Bill Gates makes the extremely big bucks. But they're for analyzing really large data sets. They're a super powerful tool. So let me just kind of give you an introduction. It's a pretty big topic. We'll do just an introduction so you can get a feel for some of the cool stuff you can do with pivot tables. So I'm going to navigate back up to the main Excel level 2 folder. So if you're in the advanced formulas folder, let's go back up. Just click on where it says Excel L2. And then from there, I want to navigate into this pivot tables folder. So let's click on the pivot tables, slicers, and pivot charts folder. Okay. And then once we're in that pivot tables folder, the file that I want to work with is shipping. So I'm going to click to the left to select the shipping file, and then I'm going to click on the download button at the top. Okay, because again, we don't want to open it in Excel online. We want to open it actually in Excel. So I click on the download option, and you should get an open option at the bottom. Okay, and you should get some data. It looks like this. If you get this security message, choose enable editing. Okay, is that working okay? Okay, so check this out, you guys. I've got this big data set, and I'm trying to get my head around what this all means. These are a bunch of sales transactions. So I've got different customers, locations, salespeople, when the orders came in and when they went out. I've got all these weird product names. And then in the extended price column, if you click in the extended price column, you can see up on the formula bar, they're just doing some simple multiplication to calculate unit price times quantity. Okay, so I'm trying to understand what the big picture is here. If I click, I'm going to click back over in column A, and if I use the command down arrow or control down arrow, that lets me jump to the last line before there's a blank row. So if I do that, command or control down, that takes me down to row 2156. So I've got a big data set, and I'm trying to understand what's going on. I'm trying to figure out, like, let's just figure out in the time we have left here, let's figure out who our best salesperson is. So I've got all these different salespeople and how much they sold on each transaction. What's the total sale for each person, and who sold the most? So before I create a pivot table, sometimes you might need to clean up the data a little bit. Before you analyze with a pivot table, your list has to have a one row descriptive column heading. You don't want to have any blank rows or blank columns in the data. You don't want to have any subtotals or grand totals, just the raw data. We're going to use the pivot table to summarize it. And then check it out. Sometimes, depending on how the data is delivered to you, you might have something like this where I get, for example, instead of having the customer name repeated for each row, I might just have something like this where it just lists out, here's the customer, location, and then all the different transactions. So if I wanted to be able to group here by company name or country, I need to have all those items filled in. So like I say, sometimes you need to kind of massage and clean up the data before you're able to do a pivot table. In this case, this data is all in good shape. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a pivot table from it. So with my cursor in any one cell in the data to create a pivot table, I'm going to go to the Insert tab. And on both the Mac and the PC, the newer versions, we have several options for pivot tables. There's a cool option they have here for recommended pivot tables. So if I click in the data and click on recommended pivot tables, it'll give me some different options. It'll actually just build the pivot table for me. Okay, so you guys can check that out later on. That kind of is like on autopilot. But what I want to show you right now are some techniques that you can use to build the pivot table from scratch with your own bare hands to design the pivot table just the way you want it. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this recommended screen here. And then with my cursor in the middle of the data, I'm going to go ahead and click on the pivot table button. And when I do that, Excel gives me this create pivot table dialog box. It wants to know where the data is that I want to analyze, and it guesses based on my cursor position everything out to the first blank row or first blank column. Notice it refers to table or range. Now here, going back to a couple things we talked about earlier, you could create a range name and use the range name as the source of the data for the pivot table. You could also create a table and use the table name as the source of the data as well. There's also an option to use external data here. So you might have data that's living in a Microsoft Access database or maybe a SQL database that's somewhere out on the network. Instead of having to import that data into Excel before you use it, you can actually have an external link here. So that's something to look at. Then we also have the options of either creating a new sheet or an existing sheet. I'm going to leave all this stuff exactly as it is and click on OK. And when I do that, Excel builds a new sheet for me. And I've got this pivot table placeholder. The screens are a little bit different, but in the Mac and the PC, we've got this pivot table field list. So you can see it's really important to have descriptive column names so you'll know what the data is referring to. And then I've got these boxes down here, and Excel says I can just drag the fields between those areas. So I want to see what's the total sales for each of my sales guys. I'm going to point at the salesperson field, and I'm going to take the salesperson field and drag it down to the rows box. I'm just pointing at salesperson, drag it down to the rows box. And cool, I get an alphabetical list of all my sales guys. And now I want to know what the total of sales for each guy are. So I'm going to go over to my field list and look for the extended price field. I'm going to take the extended price field, I'm going to drag it to the values box. Okay? And as soon as I do that, cool, I've got, instead of 2,156 rows of data, I've got this nice high-level summary, gives me an alphabetical list of all my people and what their total sales are. Okay? You didn't have to write any formulas. Okay? So that's pivot tables are kind of pretty close to magic, aren't they? Is it working for you guys?
Yeah.
if I don't hear anybody go ooh or ah, I can't really tell whether it's actually working. So you guys be the oohs and you guys can be the ahs over here.
Okay.
It's pretty cool, right? I mean, this is just, we're just scratching the surface of what you can do with pivot tables, but it's a really powerful tool for your analytics. Now here, once we do that, just like when we were in the tables earlier, you guys, we have some new contextual tabs. So I've got some pivot table tools that are up there that are only available when I'm in the middle of a pivot table. So we can do all kinds of stuff. We can sort the data. We can do some formatting. Here's just in the time we have left. Are we gonna run out of here pretty quick? Okay, I got my 2-minute warning. Erica's gonna give me the hook here in just a minute here. So just here's one last little cool magic trick with pivot tables. We took the original invoices tab, summarized the data up to a very high level. Now I can see like Andrew Ford's total sales right there. I want to see the underlying data for that. So really cool pivot table trick. Just point at Andrew's number there and click your heels 2 times. I mean, click your mouse. You can click your heels, but that won't do anything. But if you click your mouse twice, watch what happens. It creates a new sheet that extracts out just Andrew's data and it puts it in a table. Now I can do another pivot table on that. Is that cool? What, did it work for you?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of cool. So we can take the data and drill down to look at the details. So that's the concept of pivot tables. We can look at the big picture and then we can drill down into the details. So that's just kind of a quick introduction to pivot tables. But I think that's something that you guys want to explore a lot more. I think some of you guys are doing survey data for some of your stuff. You probably want to use pivot tables and you probably want to get into pivot charts to summarize that stuff. Otherwise, you'll be working all night and you won't have time to go to that party we planned earlier. Right? Okay. All right. So I think we're going to wrap it up, and hopefully you guys have some new tricks. My email is right here, cjmurphy@mindspring.com. So shoot me an email if you have any questions. If there's anything else I can help you with, but hopefully